You don't need to waste your money on a gym membership. All you need is one kettlebell. So here's a step-by-step on exactly how you can start kettlebell training at home and get great results, even if you've never touched one before. I'm not going to waste your time, so let's get straight into it. What you need to get started. Well, you'll need maybe a mat. Obviously, you'll need one kettlebell. You can get a cast iron kettlebell like I've got from websites like MirrorFit or Rogue. They're a bit cheaper. Most people recommend competition kettlebells. They have the same dimensions no matter what weight you get, but they cost a bit more, so you decide. And you'll need about 1 square meter of space. You don't need much space. I just use my kitchen. My kitchen is tiny. I live in a classic English 2 up, 2 down house, and I have more than enough room to do all my training, and I train pretty much every day just in the kitchen. If it's nice weather, I'll go outside, but apart from that, you don't need any more space. How heavy should your kettlebell be? Well, this one's tricky because every single person is different. If you weigh more, you're probably a bit stronger and you can probably get a heavier kettlebell. It also depends on your experience of training. For men who've never really trained before, I'd recommend about 12 to 16 kilos. Use a bit of common sense, use your better judgment and figure out which weight is going to be best for you. If you're not sure, go a little bit lighter and you can always increase the weight as you go. There's nothing wrong with getting a kettlebell that's too light, learning the technique and then increasing the weight, but it makes it a lot harder if you do the opposite and get a kettlebell that's too heavy and then you have to reduce the weight. And if you're a woman, 8 to 12 kilos is probably a really good starting point for you. Which exercises should you learn and in what order? This one's a matter of opinion. People might disagree with me on this, but you should learn the swing first. The swing is the most famous kettlebell exercise, and there are so many benefits to the swing. Hip mobility, explosive strength, lower back strength, hamstring strength, grip strength, cardiovascular benefits. So even if all you did with a kettlebell was just swing it, that would still be a okay training program that you could keep up for the rest of your life if you mixed in maybe some push-ups and squats with it as well. But I think the swing is the biggest bang for your buck. It's not that hard to learn really. It gets you used to using and handling the kettlebell. Once you've learned the swing, then you can progress to the clean, and this will unlock so many movements that you can do from this position. You can either then learn the press, or you can just keep the kettlebell in the rack position for squats or lunges or thrusters. Once you've developed the ability to move the kettlebell from the floor into the rack position, doors just open and your training sessions can now become far more varied and you'll have far better full body utility. So by now you'll have the swing and you'll have the clean and press. Then you'll want to learn some kind of exercise that works the back muscles directly. This can be single arm kettlebell rows. This could be ballistic rows. Anything where you're bringing the kettlebell against gravity towards your midsection. That's going to work a lot of muscles on your back. Then you might want to progress to single arm swings. This is obviously in theory twice as hard because you're using half the amount of arms. You're only using 1 arm instead of 2. And then you may want to consider learning the snatch. Now, I made the mistake of going straight in, and it took me way longer to actually learn good technique on the snatch. And in truth, I'm still learning, but I found what's really helpful is progressing from the double-handed swing to the single-hand swing to a high pull, and that will set the foundations really well for going into a full snatch. And if you do all 3 movements together, single-arm swing to a high pull to a snatch, that on its own is a really, really difficult cardiovascular workout. Now, a tip I have for the snatch and actually for the clean is to imagine that you're zipping up a jacket. You don't want the kettlebell to move too far away from your body. You want it to move up as if it's zipping up your jacket, so it's staying close to your body the whole time. I made the mistake of trying to make an arc when actually it's far easier and far more efficient to bring it up close to your body. Now, once you can do the swing, the clean and press, the snatch, as well as a few other movements like goblet squats, the ballistic row, you don't actually need to learn any more unless you want to. This alone is a big enough selection that you can do and you can keep progressing pretty much forever and still keep building muscle, keep building strength, building mobility, building flexibility. These are all the movements you need, these core movements. What should you avoid? Well, you should definitely avoid going too heavy. The weight on the kettlebell is misleading. When you are trying to get something from the floor to above your head, it feels twice as heavy. So that's a big mistake. I wish I had gone too light as opposed to too heavy. And you want to avoid doing too much volume too soon. Even if you are used to training, you're going to get sore in places that you didn't even know existed. If you've never done kettlebell swings before, you're going to get sore lower back muscles and hamstring muscles for days on end if you're not really conservative to start with. How should you track your progress, and how do you know when to progress the movements you're doing? Well, to track, use your phone or a dedicated workout notebook. I prefer to write everything by hand. I list the date, the focus of the workout, whether it's cardio, legs, push, pull. Then I list the exercise, the number of sets I did, and the number of reps I did in each set. And over time, you should try and add 1 or 2 reps per week to your previous workout. And you can adjust the sets however you like. When I start a new program, I always start with 2 to 3 sets of an exercise, aiming for, I don't know, for example, 15 reps. Once I can do 15 reps on those 2 sets, I'll add a third set in the following week. And then I repeat the process. Once I can do 15 reps for 3 sets, I'll add another set in. If I can do my target number of reps for 5 sets, then I'll increase the weight, or I'll increase the difficulty of the exercise, and I'll go back down to 2 or 3 sets again and just repeat the process. Now, you can make lots of exercises harder by either just getting a bigger kettlebell or by adding a weight vest, a backpack with bottles of water in, which is what I do. But there's so many ways you can make exercises harder and progress these exercises as well. How should you recover? Well, when it comes to food, make sure you eat enough calories and protein. Now, if you are overweight and you're trying to lose weight, make sure you eat enough protein, even if you're in a calorie deficit, or meaning you're on a diet basically. I do have a video on how much protein you should be eating. I'll link that in the top right. But to put it simply, getting enough protein is crucial. If you're deficient on protein, or you're not eating enough high quality protein sources, you won't see the results that you want despite your hard work actually lifting and using the kettlebell. And listen to your body. If you are still very, very sore from the last workout, you don't need to work out again until you're no longer sore. This is a marathon. The most important thing is to build consistency instead of following what's optimal. So part of taking care of your health and your body is knowing when not to work out and not just when you should work out. So as usual, any questions, leave them in the comments. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you've been thinking about starting kettlebell training, I strongly advise you to go online right now and buy one, get it delivered straight to your door, and start learning how to use it. It probably will change your life. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.